Get on the train before it leaves the station. Wisconsin versus Avery, a complete fabrication. Get on the train before it leaves town. The truth train coming, gonna run them down. Get on the train.
Hello there, folks. Hey, how you doing? Okay, so I'm here today because, you know, in some of my preparations here for the MAM-a-thon that's coming up at the end of April, some of the preparations I'm doing for that, I've been going back to Reddit and reading some of the Reddit posts because I've been kind of busy for, you know, about the last 3 months or so, and I haven't been getting over to Reddit nearly as much. But I went over and was checking some things out on Reddit and came across one of Case File Reviewer's recent posts, and it was pretty interesting. And after reading it, after understanding the import of it itself, I was thinking about like how odd it is that the state is seeming to now find themselves in this position of having to explain something one way or the other, and really neither getting stuck in a corner where they're having to, you know, where they're getting pinned into a corner kind of by their own past statements. Kind of interesting. So to further illustrate that, I'll have to explain a little bit more. So, but yeah, in my preparations here for the upcoming MAM-a-thon, those of you who are planning to tune in for that, you know, already have lined up. You know, Sean Atwood has agreed to come on and talk with us, or me, I should say, and. So, and got a few other people who are seemingly interested. So, and I'm in the process of, you know, finding more, you know, people to come on, you know, people that would be like relevant to the case and that sort of stuff. And so you know, also obviously we're working on that. So everybody who's, you know, getting, you know, excited about that, I hope you are, because, you know, we really want it to be something fun for that entire weekend for everybody who's, you know, involved in these cases and interested in these cases and supporting in these cases. Something kind of like a fun event for everybody in a sense, to be able to go somewhere to talk about this stuff all that weekend in a live interactive chat and that sort of stuff. So hopefully everybody will, you know, be there and support the whole MAM-a-thon. Anyways, I hope you guys like the trailer you saw at the beginning. So now, to get on to what I'm saying here, and what I'm talking about is there's a recent Reddit post from Case File Reviewer, and I'll leave the link for it below. There's a recent post, and what that post basically says is, what it's basically saying is that in a previous post on a sister sub of TikTok Manitowoc on Reddit, there was a post about the state using the term high velocity, that it was a high velocity round that killed Teresa. So what Case File Reviewer goes on to point out is that in order to be a high velocity round, you have to be it has to be faster than 2,000 feet per second. Okay, that 2,000 feet per second higher is a high velocity round. 2,000 feet per second or lower is not a high velocity round. So just so that we're clear on that, right? And it goes on to explain that all of the you know, weapons, all the guns, all the rifles, 22 rifles that were claimed at the Avery Salvage Yard and all that stuff, right? And looked at, not a single one of them was capable of a high velocity round. Okay? And the way that they go on to explain this, and hopefully the gun folks out there will be watching this, because I mean, although I have some understanding of guns, I don't have a very intimate understanding of, you know, all this stuff. So those of you who can attest to the fact that 2,000 feet per second is the boundary for what's between a, you know, high velocity round and a non-high velocity round. So if anybody out there wants to help confirm, you know, although I think Case File Reviewers have probably got it all, you know, has researched it and it's all legit. Obviously, it's always good to do your own homework on things, right, folks? So I just got home from work. And I read this today during lunch and just thought it was interesting. So I am, also planning to look into it as well because I find it very interesting. So it goes on to say that none of the rifles on the Avery salvage yard, not even the Glenfield that belonged to Raleigh Johnson, not even that, none of those weapons were capable of doing a high velocity round. The high velocity round that is used is called a 22 Hornet, and it's capable of going 26,090 feet per second, or 2,600. Sorry, 2,690 feet per second. So obviously that's over 2,000, right? Here's the thing: that round will not fit into a slot for a 22 LR, which is what the Glenfield and all the rifles at the Avery Salvage were. They were all a 22 LR. And an LR rifle will not, the Hornet, or what they call it is the varmint, or a 22 varmint, because it's used for killing varmints like gophers and rats and bunnies and rabbits, whatever, and that's what it's used for. So it got the name varmint, but it won't. It's uniquely shaped so that it will only fit into certain rifles that are capable of firing it. It actually will not fit into any of the rifles at the Avery Salvage Yard. Now, what's interesting about this is that they go on to explain that the measurements of the skull, like the beveling, and then the like radius of the like hole in the skull, or the part of that the edge of that hole or whatever. So by figuring out what basically that the radius or whatever of that, or the circumference of that opening in the skull, they have determined that an opening that size, and here, let me put it this way, they say at the varmint would leave a 10.55 millimeter hole in the skull. The like normal ones, the 22 LR, they would leave like a 7.15 millimeter hole. Well, the fact is that the actual size of that, if you figure out that hole from the radius of the piece of skull they have there that has the beveling, you figure it out, it's actually a close to 10.5 centimeter hole. So it would suggest that if Teresa Halbach was shot with the rifle, then it wasn't any of the rifles on the Avery Salvage Yard, because they wouldn't be able to fit this high velocity round into the guns that they had. And it's the state themselves that has determined it was a high velocity round that killed Teresa. That's what they're saying. So it's their own words. They determined it was a high velocity round. Yet they didn't seem to want to make the connection that none of the rifles they found on the Avery Salvage Yard would do that. So that's interesting to me. But so that's what I found interesting about this post by Case File Reviewer. I encourage everybody to go check it out. I'm going to leave the link, as I said, below. The other thing I find interesting here is that we're obviously hearing that the state said it was a high velocity round. We know that the rifles on the Avery Salvage Yard aren't capable of firing a high velocity round. The round won't actually fit into the rifles that they had there, right? But then we also have the fact that KZ and her experts have determined that you can't make the blood spatter on the interior tailgate of the RAV4 the way the prosecution said it happened. They proved that you couldn't do it that way, but they did prove that if you took a blunt instrument and had blood on it, and when you flung it back, when you came back, the cast-off pattern would leave drops, like you were seeing on the interior of the rear tailgate. So that then puts it in a whole different realm. So the state's now going to be stuck between, they're obviously not going to want to say that it was a hammer or anything or whatever. They're not going to want to change their story at this point to say that might have happened. And so they're going to be stuck with this fact that the size of the hole, the fact that the state determined it was a high velocity round, yet no high velocity capable rifles were found anywhere on the Avery salvage yard. The weapon that they claimed killed Teresa was not capable of firing high velocity rounds. It's just, so I find it interesting. The state is like stuck between these choices of, they definitely aren't going to want to back Zellner on the blunt instrument doing cast off on the interior tailgate, and that Teresa was actually killed at the rear of the RAV4, basically by the driver's rear corner of the RAV4. They don't want to go. They're obviously not going to want to go along with that, and so now they're going to be stuck with this whole thing with the way that the gun thing is panning out, because there's clearly no high velocity rifles on the Avery salvage yard there, and it seems pretty clear that it was a high velocity round that caused the damage in the skull, or that the opening of that hole in the skull essentially, and it matches more of a 22 varmint, which is a high velocity round, and the size that would have been created by one of the rifles, say at this Avery salvage yard, would have been more like 7.5 millimeters, whereas the varmint creates a 10.5 millimeter. So it's interesting, but it just keeps, it's just interesting to me how it's all these different explanations for what's happening, and basically what's certain in all of it is that the state is just completely wrong in whatever they, in what they came up with at trial. It's laughable, and how they're gonna stick to it. It'd be interesting to see, but obviously they'll probably say some more disingenuous stuff like they said in their most recent response. But anyway, so moving on. So it occurred to me, it's like, here we go again. The state's own words are coming back and putting them into a very odd position. Because what do you say now? Do you just say, oh yeah, he had another gun somewhere, a mysterious gun somewhere to go along with the magic bullet? Right? I don't know. So I just find it funny that the state, because of their own deeds and their own words, are getting backed into these corners.
There's something going on.
For me, it's like, you determined high velocity round, but yet none of the rifles on the Avery salvage yard are capable of doing that. So it's just yet another interesting little discrepancy, isn't it? To go along with the bones, how is that? Look at how they were in a position with the bones. It's like they gave them back to the hall. They gave these bones back to the hall box that were possible human bones. That's all that had been determined ever, was that they were possible human. And they gave these bones back to the hall box, which basically means that it concedes. It's like them conceding that, yes, we agree these are probably Teresa's, but they didn't want to do that at trial because they knew that the jury might listen to Dean and Jerry and what they were saying, that that there was a second burn, or that the fire pit wasn't the original burn site, and that sort of stuff, right? So that's why they didn't want anybody to realize that those could be Teresa's bones. So they say, I'm not even going to spend 20 seconds on those, and they're downplaying them, but then they give them back. So now Kathleen Zellner goes to test the bones. She wants to test them and prove whether or not they're Teresa or not. And she can't, because they were given back, right? And so this is now what's going back to court. It's a violation of statute because the evidence should have been preserved. And if it was, and if they did want to get rid of it, then there should have been correspondence to Stephen Avery or his attorneys at the time, and there wasn't, and all these things. And it's like now they've backed themselves in the corner, and you guys all saw in their recent response where they just said, and we haven't violated statute because those bones were possible human, basically acknowledging that they gave bones that they didn't know were Teresa's back. That's what they're saying in that. They're saying they're only possible human. They're not Teresa's. Or we don't know, right? It's just like so disingenuous, right? And so it's funny. I mean, how many more corners are we going to see them get backed into? Anyway, I just thought that was interesting, folks. wanted to point that out. Also wanted to talk a little bit about MAMathon, so hopefully everybody's, you know, liking that idea. Hopefully everybody's getting on board with that idea. You know, it should be, you know, a lot of fun. It should be, you know, a lot of good talk, a lot of good conversation. We're going to get some interesting people to be part of it, so it's going to be a pretty cool thing. So go ahead and play another one of the bumpers for you guys on the way out here. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe.
There's something going on in Wisconsin that's not kosher. We better stop, let's all